and welcome to another edition of Full Focus, where law and news intersect. I'm Crystal Parham. In today's edition, we discuss whether marijuana should be legalized in the state of New York. We travel to Queens to experience UFO phenomenon, and we go inside the box to discuss immigration law and current paths to citizenship. So we have an exciting show, so let's go.
I seen them crossing the skies, and I know we're not alone.
There's so many planets and so many stars. Come on, who's to say we're the only ones? Come on, that's ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
I believe that there's life on other planets, perhaps, but I think the UFOs that people see in this country and all over the world, perhaps something involving governments and special projects that the government doesn't make us aware of what's going on. Do I believe that there's Martians coming down here and abducting people? No. But I believe that there is life on other planets, perhaps. And my real belief is when someone sees an object in the sky, it is involving something with the government.
Ufologist Adrian D'Souza has been studying this phenomenon for 22 years, and he wants you to know that UFOs may be closer than you think. In fact, they're in Queens, New York.
Well, they definitely do exist. There's a lot of, testimony from high, officials in government, military, air pilots, police, politicians, that, they say that these beings do exist, and even astronauts. No one's more credible than the astronauts from NASA during the Apollo 11 mission, where they, saw objects on the moon, and they're actually transcripts that, show that this actually happened.
Tell us a little bit about Apollo 11, for people that don't know.
Well, the Apollo 11 mission that went up to the moon, basically that's when we went up there, our first, moon landing, and they were objects that were on the moon that were talked about in secret code, where there were domes on the moon. They use secret code words like hotels, and Santa Claus does exist, referring to the beings, because Santa Claus, is a, fictional, person. So things like that with Apollo 11 and the astronauts, Buzz Aldrin and Edgar Mitchell, they claim that they saw these actual objects hovering, over them, and they were being intimidated by them. That, they felt that they didn't belong there. And you have credible people who have talked about this, and it goes back thousands and thousands of years, and even in the Bible and in caves, and they're just so, the evidence is overwhelming. There's a ufologist by the name of Stanton Friedman who says there's a truckload of evidence. It's so overwhelming. Where do we park the truck? As well, there are people who have claimed to be abducted by these beings, and there's actual physical proof of this. There's a scientist who just passed away. Well, actually, he's a doctor. He's a podiatrist named Dr. Roger Lear, and he has proof of removing objects that from abductees who claim that they're implants. And he's actually recorded this, the procedures of the removal of these implants, and have had them, examined by universities to find out what they are. And the findings are absolutely incredible, that they're meteorites, put into bone without any proof of incision. They just were put there. And the people who have this have claimed to have been, abducted by these beings. So there's a lot of evidence when it comes to that. And they've just found a skull, the Star Child skull, which is claimed to be a hybrid, half alien and human. And they've done DNA testing on that skull, and have found out, very interesting results. So there's a lot of proof that's out there that, is being suppressed, but little by little it's coming out. When I got off the Grand Central Parkway and I came here on the Cross Island Parkway south, I saw this object now to my left because I'm coming in a southbound direction, and I pulled over here on the shoulder, and I looked at the object to my left for a few minutes, trying to determine, rule out the possibility if it was something else other than an unidentified flying object. And as I watched it, no sound whatsoever coming from this object, and it wasn't moving, it was stationary, and the color it was emitting was like a whitish, bluish color, and it had a shape to it that I've never seen before. Never seen in a star or a plane, and I don't think it was a satellite either. You know, I was in awe looking at this object. I looked at it for a few minutes and I focused on it. I tried not to, you know, keep my eye off it to see what this object was, trying to determine if it was, you know, it was a plane but by me driving before I pulled over, I kind of gathered that it wasn't, because I'd never seen anything like it. And I pulled over, I was just in an amazement of this object, of the color, the shape, and the thing that got me was no sound whatsoever. And as I watched it for a few minutes to my left, I decided to take a picture of it. I took several pictures of it. The second sighting was even a better experience than the first, because the object was much closer to the ground. You know, it was just above the trees, where the first object was much higher, where it could be in the direction of the flight of where a plane would be. So, but the second one was even better, because the object was actually moving at a faster speed, and the colors that it was emanating was really, it was something really to see. It was really a sight. And when I got home, I actually looked it up, you know, online to see if anybody else had reported it before I sent in the MUFON report. And I actually found a YouTube video that showed something similar to what I saw on the 4th of July several years before, you know, that. So I thought that was really interesting too. Because when I looked at the objects, it was actually in Coney Island. And they looked very similar, but it was more than one object, where I only saw one. But this was several. And a lot of people in Coney Island had saw the same thing. So I don't know if they just come out, you know, at certain times on the 4th of July when, you know, people are looking up to get people's attention. But I was definitely excited. But I learned something from that sighting. If I were to ever have another sighting again, I wouldn't want to take a picture of it again. I think what I did wrong, why I disappeared, I didn't communicate with it. I felt that from what I've learned in the study of UFOs and my experience of having that second object disappear on me, I think that it knew that I wanted to capture it on camera. That instead of me trying to communicate with it. So now the next sighting I have, I'm not going to worry about, you know, binoculars. I'm just going to try to communicate with the object.
And how would you do that?
I've heard they can communicate telepathically. So I would try that. And I would even, you know, audibly, you know, talk to it as well.
Korean War veteran Bernard Hall had his first encounter with UFOs as a young man in Korea. He was so taken by this experience that he has been studying this phenomenon ever since.
We're in trouble. For my 58 years, I don't know why I got into it, 58 years of studying a similar, this subject. Of course, I had ridicule, and I understand it. Even my friend, you know, Red, UFO, strange objects in the sky, he's shell-shocked. That's what my friend said that had never been overseas. Oh, Red's shell-shocked. You know? But then later on, they say, well, hey, Red, many years later, hey, Red, we hearing about. I said, yes, I know, I know. They're hearing about it now. I said, I told you, you know, you can. Well, UFOs go back millions of years. They go back probably during the formation of this planet. They were traveling space. Just like we have missionaries who go to a certain place and they see a piece of land. They say, well, let's start something there, right? The same thing with these people. In their traveling, they decided to come to this place and start it up. But certain things went awry, and mankind started to falling apart. They were given a teaching to select groups of individuals who were prepared so they could preserve this for future generations. As people became aware that there was something missing, they might want this knowledge to help them to evolve. We have gone so far astray, and it's all because the religions are not teaching what they're supposed to teach. I run into these ministers and pastors, and I talk to them, they get away from me. They get away quick. Because I know they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. But they're here now to awaken us, because we're getting to the point where we're destroying the planet. We are raping it. We're doing all kinds of things. And nature can't replenish itself fast enough. The oil that we're taking out, there are a whole lot of cavities underneath the ground. The ground is going to have to move. And when it starts doing that, the planet becomes unbalanced. And the Earth is it has an intelligence to want to keep the balance that it has, that's natural. If something starts going awry, then it reacts. Land will go down, land will come up. All kinds of change will happen to maintain this balance. Those who are not in the proper places, they'll be suffering because of it. But that's why they're here, to awaken. It's in the Bible. There are things saying the sons of God came unto the daughters of men. It's in the book. They ignore, the ministers ignore all these things. The sons of God came unto the daughters of men, meaning these individuals who were called the sons of God mated with earthly women. Ezekiel and this wheel that comes out of the heavens and lands, he says, outsteps those who resemble man. I ran into a minister who found over 300 references to flying objects in the Bible. But you hear anything about this? No. The Isaiah is in a field, and I'll try to show you what he said. He says, he's looking up, and he said, who are these that fly as a cloud and as doves to their windows? There have been pictures shown of crafts in the sky. I don't have it right here. No. Where a hovering craft, and these crafts come out from underneath. When they get out, they become very white from an energy field around. And the whole lot of them come out, and they'll go to different areas of the land. These are crafts that can pick up thought waves, patterns, and things like that, and they transfer it back in a mother's ship, so they can learn the languages of all the different races on this earth. The picture of what he was seeing was white lights, balls of white light coming and going into a craft. And he said, who are these that fly as a cloud and as doves? Well, white doves are normally white. Doves into their windows, going in, whatever it was. But it's all in the book. It's all in the books.
Do you believe in UFOs? Contact us at fullfocusnyc@gmail.com.
Tell me a little bit about immigration reform, and why is that such a hot button issue today?
Well, immigration reform is a hot button issue these days for, I would think, 3 principal reasons. One, the economy isn't doing too well, and people are scared for their jobs and think that maybe foreigners or immigrants may be encroaching on American jobs. 2, I believe that as a society we're becoming more intermingled, and people do know others who are undocumented and are concerned about their well-being and their future in the United States. And 3, there's a big conception that the Republicans will lose Hispanic votes if they don't make some kind of a decision about immigration reform. So immigration is a hot topic on all sides of the aisle.
And how has immigration changed over the years, in your opinion?
Well, a big issue is that immigration hasn't really changed in the last 10 or 12 years. We've been waiting for an amnesty or some kind of program to benefit the undocumented individuals here, but there really hasn't been a lot of change. Fortunately, the Obama administration has in 2012 started a program which allows youthful entries, children who entered as to no fault of their own. They came in as minors to obtain work permits and Social Security cards. Certain cases have been placed on hold. For example, if a case involves family reunification, the prosecutors are willing to exercise discretion. But in the form of positive, affirmative applications that people can qualify for, there hasn't been a lot of changes.
So you just mentioned that Obama has put something, is that the DACA that you're talking about?
Yes.
So he is making some initiatives to keep people in the country, but yet he's called the deporter-in-chief. Like, why is that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Obama has been called the deporter-in-chief because under his administration, there have been more deportations than under any other administration. However, you know, it's a controversial figure because he these deportations are as a result of laws that were in place before he became president of the United States. So while there have been some positive changes through the Obama administration, there have been a lot of negative and hurtful deportations.
So what advice would you give to someone who is here illegally if they wanted to become legal?
Okay. I advise that they speak with an attorney that practices immigration law and understand that the options are very limited. If someone is selling them a story of immediate permanent residency, it's probably not true. To make sure that they are paying their taxes, that they're able to document their physical presence in the United States, because if anything does change, it's good to know, to have those positive factors in your side. But definitely speak to an attorney who practices immigration law, and beware of schemes and people who want to make a quick buck off of you for the coveted green card.
Because you hear about that all the time, right? You hear about people spending all their hard-earned money
Yes.
to get an attorney, to get them citizenship. And so what are some, you've mentioned some of the red flags, but are there any other things you could advise people to picking an attorney, pick a good one?
Well, first, make sure that your attorney is a licensed attorney. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but most people don't understand that as an attorney, I will tell you my first and last name, tell you the states where I'm licensed to practice. A lot of times, immigrants go to notaries or notarios, individuals who in the United States can only certify that you've signed a document, but these people entrust them with their cases. So, and they're not given a full name. So make sure that the person you see actually gives you their full name, tells you where they're licensed. Google them, speak to other people who've used their services. Reach out to the Board of Immigration Appeals. There's a list of attorneys that have been disciplined for misconduct, and you just have to be very aware. Ask the attorney questions. Another thing is it's good to go to a practitioner who focuses primarily on immigration. Immigration is a code. It's not common law. It's not common sense. You have to go to an attorney who knows where to look and how to apply the law to your case.
Why do you practice immigration law? What do you love about it?
Well, I always say with immigration law, the highs are high and the lows are very low. But I think I practice it because I enjoy unifying families. And you know, the United States is really an amazing country. And there are things that you can do here that you cannot do anywhere else. So to give someone the opportunity to thrive in the United States is priceless to me. So for as low as it can get with the deportations and the separation of families, there's something to be said that you're giving someone a lifeline to stay in the United States.
So you hear a lot about families being split apart. You know, for instance, the child is born in the United States, but the father came in illegally, the mother's an American, and the father being separated from his child. How often does that happen, and are there ways to stop that?
It happens quite frequently. There are ways to stop it, but a lot of it has to do with the immigrants' good moral character and their physical presence here in the United States. There are defensive applications which could stop that deportation. There are ways to apply for waivers and so that the family could remain unified. But it's a complex situation and it's a case-by-case analysis, so it's something that you'd have to speak with an attorney about.
What about, say, for instance, you have an undocumented person who commits a crime? Is that automatic deportation?
Well, it depends on the crime. In New York and New Jersey, most serious crimes law enforcement will alert immigration if an undocumented person has been convicted of a crime. And that starts the deportation procedures. And once placed in removal proceedings, the immigrant will have an opportunity to defend their right to remain in the United States. And depending on the crime, the individual, their equities here in the United States, it could be an uphill battle, or it could be a case without a solution.
that it would be great for the economy, it being taxed, and it would do really great in lowering the crime rates in New York, so yeah.
I definitely believe that if marijuana was legalized and probably set at reasonable prices, that a lot of black market marijuana crime would go down.
The country is in a wave and the world is in a wave where it's moving to legality, and so it just makes sense.
In the Uniform Crime Reports, which is the FBI reports, the latest reports in 2012 were approximately 853,000 people were arrested in the United States for marijuana, either possession or sale. Out of that 853,000, 750,000 were possession, simple possession cases. In New York City in 2011, 50,000 plus people were arrested for simple possession of marijuana. So that gives you kind of an idea of the numbers.
However, in order to legalize marijuana in the state of New York, there could be a lengthy political process.
The way that it would be decriminalized is it would have to go to the Assembly and then the Senate and then ultimately to the governor for his decision. The way that New York is set up, the Assembly would probably engage in something like that. The question is, would the Senate, which is a Republican majority, that's where the problem would lie. Could we get the Republican Party to go along with the decriminalization of marijuana?
Not everyone believes that marijuana legalization should be given carte blanche. Mental health experts believe there should be age restrictions.
To legalize marijuana for people over the age of 21 and not make it legally available to people under the age of 21. Now, as a realist, I realize it would be very, very difficult to keep that out of the hands of teenagers. But to make it legal for them, I think, would be a huge mistake. They aren't developed, and there's a danger to their IQ, and there's a danger of a dip into psychosis, simply because they're still forming.
The cost of drug enforcement has grown steadily over the past decade. In 2010, states spent an estimated $3.6 billion enforcing possession laws, a 30% increase from 10 years earlier.
If they decriminalize that, first of all, it would give law enforcement a chance. It would unchain them from going after essentially harmless victims and go after true criminals who are out there pouncing upon the society and committing violent crimes, which they prove in marijuana users don't commit, as opposed to heroin and crack cocaine users. Also, the revenues that would be saved from no longer having to have law enforcement and the legislature going after these people could then be shifted, I would think, hopefully, to social programs to benefit the rest of society. So I think it would have everything but a deleterious effect.
So are there any trends you've been seeing recently in terms of arrests? I know there's been a whole initiative on stop and frisk, that it's over, but what are some of the observations you've seen?
Well, speaking anecdotally, as a lawyer who practices in Manhattan, despite what we might hear in the news about efforts being made to decriminalize marijuana, or not necessarily decriminalize, but take the focus away from marijuana and arresting people and prosecuting people for small amounts of marijuana. Apparently that memo hasn't reached the police department, because every day we see people coming through the system who are charged with simple possession of small amounts of marijuana, and they end up being arrested, being booked, and spending 24 hours or more in custody before they see a judge.
From what you know, are these people that actually have criminal histories, or are these people with no criminal history whatsoever? They're still spending time in the system before they see the judge?
Oh, we see both. People, who have prior criminal histories and people with no criminal histories are being put through the system.
And is your organization doing anything about that? Any initiatives to let the mayor know, or anything that you know of?
Not only my organization, but organizations across the city, concerned citizens, are constantly lobbying the administration and the police department to take a less strict stand, or a less harsh stand in regards to marijuana possession. because what's happening, there's an inordinate amount of black and brown people who are being arrested for these particular offenses, and they're being charged criminally. Some of them are coming through the process with criminal records, meaning they'll have a permanent entry on their record that they've been convicted of a crime, which can have severe consequences further on down the line in their lives, the consequences in terms of pursuing higher education, consequences in terms of employment, even one's credit history can be negatively impacted by a criminal conviction.
In the next edition of Full Focus.
And that wraps up this edition of Full Focus. Thank you for joining us and continuing in the conversation. I'm Crystal Parham. Until next time.